Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third live stream in Champlain College's spring series. My name is Javon Ellis, one of the admissions counselors here, and this is what to expect as a game major. Know that this and all previous live streams can be found on YouTube, on the admitted student pages on the Champlain website, and archived on our blog, champlainadmissions.champlain.edu. Feel free to ask questions in the live chat, and we'll do our best to make sure that they get answered on air. I'll be hopping back at the end of the live stream, but for now, let me turn it over to our student host, Charlie Carucci. Take it away, Charlie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charlie Carucci, and I am a senior game design major originally from Stamford, Connecticut. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I want to thank all of our panelists as well. I'd like for each of them to introduce themselves. So if you could say your name, your year, your major, your hometown, and James, we'll start with you.
Hi, folks. So my name is James. I am a senior game programming major, and I'm originally from Westfield, Massachusetts. I think that was all of the points.
I think so. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura. I'm also a senior game programmer, and I'm from Albany, New York.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zach. I'm a sophomore game design major from Exton, Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Michael Hokenyu. I'm a second-year game production management major from Aruba.
All right, awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm so glad that you could be here because we're going to be talking about our experiences in Champlain's game studio, which is something I think we're all very familiar with, or at least I hope you all are. So what I'm going to be doing is asking each of you questions about being a game major. That way we can give the prospective students who are watching a better understanding of what they should expect if they should choose to study game development at Champlain College. All right, so we'll just jump right in then. The first question that I wanted to ask each of you, actually, is one that I know we all get a lot, but I think it helps show our passion for our programs. Would you each mind sharing what made you want to pursue a career in game development?
So I think the number one thing that made me want to be, in the game industry was just the fact that it's interactive entertainment, right? I love the idea of crafting a story, crafting an experience for a player to go through. Some of my favorite childhood memories are, playing games with my friends, all of us gathering around a PlayStation trying to beat a really hard level together, stuff like that. And so I wanted to be a part of the industry that creates experiences like that.
Yeah, for myself, I started playing games when I was in about the third grade, and I know once I started, I got really hooked onto that, and I started typing in on Google how to make games, and I thought it would be as simple as just Googling it and then making a game. But my older cousin actually, he developed games, so I looked up to him a lot, and he always said great things about how fulfilling he felt and how great it was. So I decided to just kind of go from there.
For me, I just love the creative aspect and also the team working of making the games itself. Yeah, I remember always creating parties for my friends for their birthdays and also just getting stuff done in a fun and fashionable way.
Mm-hmm. And for me, it started when I was really young. I've wanted to make games for a really long time. I used to grow up playing games like Spyro with my dad, and I remember just being so happy in times like that, that as I grew up and I played more games with my friends and more games with my dad, I wanted to give that same experience of just having so much fun back to other people. So that's why I decided to go into games.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. I want to focus on Zach and Michael Paul for a second. Both of you are sophomores, and since we are in the spring semester, I know you're both taking Production 1 at the moment. This is the first real game production class that students at Champlain get to take. And I was wondering if you can explain a little about how the class is structured and how your experience so far has been working with a team of developers.
So the way the class is structured is we create 3 games over the course of the semester. So the first game is about 3 to 4 weeks long. Second game is a week longer, and the third game is a week longer, even more. So it's this constant add-on of all these different weeks, so you have more and more and more to do for your games. It's structured really well, in my opinion,
Yes,
because
super
the
well.
first project is kind of like a test project where you're really getting used to working in a team with all the different disciplines. And the second project is when you can start to really make a game. And third project is everyone knows their roles, everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing on a team now. So you're really just creating a game out of that. How have you been liking it so far, Michael?
So far, it's been super fun. I really enjoy it. We're actually on the same team.
Yeah.
So it's been so far we just started our new project 2 weeks ago, and we have what, 4 weeks left?
4 weeks left.
So it's an adventure, and I don't regret it doing it at all. So yeah.
I second that. It's been a really great experience. And like, as a designer, being able to work with other majors, like, the programmers and the artists and the producers, and doing all of these, like, just design specific things instead of having to do all the little bits of the project myself has been a really awesome experience.
Yeah. And then just as a producer, just like our first time working with like people again with cross majors, is also like it's just nice to actually use the skills that we've been building up throughout the other semesters and actually using it with other people and trying to teach them what we know. So yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, it sounds like you guys are having a good experience so far. I do have actually another follow-up question for you two, though. Something we learn in these production classes is how to work in a development team. And when you work in a team, sometimes you're going to run into conflicts. So I was wondering, obviously without giving specific details, how have you been learning to deal with conflicts in your team? I mean, have you dealt with them at all? I'm just wondering how you're sort of handling that situation.
So one of the issues that come up in a lot of these teams, I should say, is communication. Because especially when you get into these large team environments, you're going to have everyone has their own idea of what the game is going to look like, and everyone has to work together to make sure that a singular vision is formed. Working with that has been easier than you would think. Usually you just have a meeting, you take an hour, you sit down and you write down what everyone thinks on a big whiteboard, and we eliminate the things that we don't want, keep the things we do, and at the end of the meeting, everyone knows exactly what's going to be in the game. Do you want to elaborate? Or
Also bouncing off with that is communication opposed to like just constant retrieving information from other people. You will definitely have people who will say, "Oh, I forgot that that task was supposed to be due on that date." Especially as a producer, I feel like I sometimes annoy people saying like, "Hey, do you remember to do question B, or have you done task C?" But it's just organization. Not everyone's organized, but it's like it's just nice for myself, for personally, nice to have somebody to lean on if I forgot something. And I think that's like a very nice community or team building. So
yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's definitely a really important skill that we learn in our production classes. So thank you for talking about that a little bit. So for my next question, I'm going to open it up to all of the panelists again. I was hoping each of you could talk a little bit about your respective programs. So, what do your classes look like outside of the production classes where you're with all of the other game majors? James and Laura, you're both programmers, so you might want to split this one up.
Yeah, so I guess starting from day one in game programming, you get right into programming. And I do want to note that it's not expected you will know any programming coming to Champlain. They'd start at a very base level, but you get essentially thrown into C++ starting your first day here in Intro to Programming. And from there, we start off with a lot of classes shared with computer science majors. So there's a lot of base knowledge that's the same with intro to programming, advanced programming, data structures, and algorithms. It's all sort of getting the base programming skills that you need to start taking more like game programming classes.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of math involved too. So you'll be taking classes like calculus and 3D math. And we do think that it's pretty important to learn a lot of 3D math skills, especially with game programming. And then once you get into kind of your later years, you can kind of figure out what sort of programming you might want to do, whether it's like more physics-based, graphics, networking, stuff like that. So we'll take basically a class in every single one of those categories to kind of figure out what we like doing the best. Do you have anything else?
Yeah. And as of now, so Laura mentioned a bunch of categories: AI, networking, graphics. Right now, there aren't any official specializations for game programming, but based on the electives you take, you can sort of do an unofficial specialization in graphics or in AI, for example.
Yeah, so for production management, we do focus, we are in the gaming industry, but also we focus on more of the business aspect. You'll be taking a lot of business courses, just like accounting, management, finance, what else is that? Statistics, communication. You'll be working as a producer, or as most people know, as a manager. You'll be overseeing, just making those schedules, making sure that the whole team itself the workflow is super smooth, and making sure that the deadlines are met.
So. And then for designers, we really dip our toes in everything. Designers, I feel like, have a lot of options they can go for like minors and specializations. There's one minor, the game programming minor, which allows designers to take a lot of those programming courses. I myself am taking a minor in game programming. So for designers who want to stay on the programming side, you can do that. For designers who want to go into audio development, we have a sonic arts specialization, and I have to say audio designers are really, really nice to have on your team, because they can do everything a normal designer can and make music, which is really nice. But for the course load in general, like without minors and specializations, we have classes in visual communication, we have human communication. You might have noticed that a lot of designers do talking. We are like the bridges between all the other disciplines. We have to make sure everyone's on the same page. We have to push forward one vision. But on a more technical side, we also have classes like game technology, where we learn things like Unity, how to make basic game prototypes, and yeah, designers do a little bit of art, a little bit of programming. Even without specializations, we do a little bit of everything.
Awesome, cool. Thank you, everyone, for talking about the different classes that you take. But I do have a follow-up question for everyone. It's kind of a two-parter. So what has been your favorite class so far, and what has been your most challenging class so far? And it's okay if they're the same class.
Boy, my favorite class so far is probably Artificial Opponents, which is a senior level game programming artificial intelligence class. And what we did for that class was make basically entire AIs for games. So our professor gave us all of the code, everything already set up for a Minesweeper game, and we had to write an AI to solve Minesweeper. Or we had another one, which was he gave us an entire Gin Rummy game, and we had to set up multiple AI players that played Gin Rummy against each other. For my hardest class, that would probably be graphics programming 2. I am definitely not a graphics programmer. That doesn't always click with me. Doesn't always, make sense right away. So for that class, there was a lot of emailing my professor, emailing other professors too, working with other students, trying to figure out graphics.
I guess my favorite class was graphics programming 1. That one was basically we learned basic OpenGL. We learned how to write shaders, and it was a lot of just kind of visual stuff, which I had a lot of fun doing. So like, I guess one of the projects that we did was we made like an earth and a sun and a moon, and we did a different shading and lighting mechanic on it, and then we got to see what it would look like. And it was pretty fun. I just liked seeing everything visual there. But then my hardest class was graphics programming too, just like James. That one was taken in Montreal. We both took it together abroad, and it was just a little bit harder to grasp. And there was definitely a lot of emailing our professor and asking for help. But it was also a pretty rewarding class despite the challenges.
Definitely.
My favorite class must be project management and organization, is where we just learn different ways of organizing and making sure that the project itself is met the date. It was just super fun. We learned a lot of communication skills. We also learned a lot of ways of interacting with our peers, and also and my least favorite might be financial accounting. Managerial accounting is fun. Financial accounting is more letters and word. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Numbers. Wow, and more numbers, which is more on my weaker side. So
Yeah. Geez, for me, I think my favorite class has definitely been Principles of Game Design. It is a course you take your first semester of your sophomore year, and it's so much fun. It's also actually my hardest class that I've had in my major, because what we do is you create one physical prototype of a game every single week for 5 weeks. So every single week you come up with an idea for, I think we had to do 20 different game ideas, and then we narrowed it down to 3, and then we presented 3 to our individual little groups, and then we voted on which one we wanted to do. And then, and this wasn't a group project, this was all individual. We were just set in groups to help decide. And then we got out cardboard or whatever else we wanted to do for our project, and we made it. And that Friday we presented it, and then Monday we had to come back with 20 new ideas. It was really fun, but for a long time there, it felt like I was doing just so much work, which I was, but it was fun work because I was making games. So yeah, it's definitely my favorite and hardest class.
Awesome, cool. Thank you everyone for talking about your classes. I could probably talk about that all day long, but we're gonna move on to a question from one of our viewers. Somebody's wondering what the specs are for the computers that we use in the game labs. Does anyone know that answer?
I don't know specifically in the game labs. All I know is that the computer in the game labs have so far handled literally everything I've thrown at them. They are really, really beefed up computers. I actually once had Unreal and Unity open and both running projects at the same time. So if that answers your question at all, I think in general, the lab computers are very, very powerful. In terms of personal computers, I don't really use my personal computer for a lot of big work like Unity and Unreal, since the lab computers here are so nice. And since Champlain is a smaller campus, I can literally just walk over at any point and hop into the labs and use one of those amazing computers for projects.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Zach. We have another question from one of our viewers that I wanted to ask. And this was for everyone. Why did you choose Champlain? Can't get more simple than that.
So there's a lot of reasons that I chose Champlain, but I think one of the biggest ones for me personally is, as a programmer, most of the other schools I was looking at were technical institutes, engineering schools, stuff like that. And I didn't want to just be with tech people, right? Like I wanted to go to school with people who were interested in all sorts of different things. And in addition to the game majors and the other tech majors here at Champlain, there's also graphic design majors and education majors and marketing majors and social work majors and so on and so forth. And I really found the mix of ideas and the mix of personalities here at Champlain really unique and to me really appealing.
For myself, it was pretty similar to James's answer. I wanted a school where my major was exactly what I was doing. I noticed with a lot of schools that had some sort of game in them, it was usually a specialization. It would be maybe like a major in computer science and a minor in game development. And I wasn't really sure what that meant. But with Champlain, we have the major directly called game programming, game design, game art and animation. So I knew exactly from there I would be knowing like what kind of courses I could be taking. And then second reason is definitely the area. I really like the lake and being so close to a lot of restaurants and shops and stuff like that. So it was kind of a 2-in-1 deal there.
For me, it's like honestly, it's the upside down curriculum that you can like do your major like in the first semester. Especially what Laura and James said before is that Champlain College is like it's very specialized. Other gaming colleges they will say, oh, game development, and Champlain really stuck out for me because it says game artist, game producing, game designing, and that really like stuck out for me, and that got me more attracted to Champlain College.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it's pretty much the same exact thing. It really is like Champlain. It says it right there. You don't get a degree in, like computer science with a specialization in game design. Like when I graduate from Champlain, I'm getting a degree in game design. So it says right there what I do. And just in general, it's the area. Burlington is beautiful. I went to Champlain's Game Academy over the summer, which was an amazing experience. And I actually never really had a tour of Champlain because I had gone to the Game Academy twice actually. And it was so nice to be able to be on campus and meet my professors and walk around Burlington and basically be here before actually going here, that when it came time to apply for college at Champlain, literally was my only and first choice.
Awesome. I always love hearing how people chose Champlain because I think it's always a little bit different for everybody. We do have one more question from one of our viewers right now. What game engines do we typically use? Which ones are we using most often? James, why don't you take this one?
Yep. So there are two primary game engines that you're going to see most often, and that is the Unity engine by Unity Technologies and the Unreal Engine by Epic Games. Different majors have different preferences. A lot of the programmers and a fair number of designers prefer Unity. A lot of game artists and about the other half of the designers prefer Unreal. And there's a lot of talk about which engine is better, which one, is worse, I guess. But really, they're pretty much evenly matched, and they have different strengths and different weaknesses. For the production classes, Unity is far and away the most common choice, but Unreal has sort of been being picked up more and more. And the game programming professors are encouraging the use of Unreal a little bit more. And there are other things too. So in the level design classes, designers use the source engine. They use the Hammer level editor when doing that. And I think there might be a couple other. There's Game Maker. You see that pop up every now and then. But yeah, the two primary are Unreal and Unity.
Thank you, James. So I'm going to move on to some of the other questions that I've prepared. Now, what's great about being a game major at Champlain is that your understanding of the game industry starts expanding immensely as soon as you hit day one. And by your senior year, you'll have the opportunity to attend the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco. So GDC was actually just last week, and Laura had the pleasure of attending. So Laura, how was your experience at GDC this year?
So I had a really great time. I just got back, and I was there from Tuesday to Saturday, and every single day there was something really new and really awesome to do. Our career advisor, Daphne Walker, she's in charge of the entire game studio career-wise, and she set up meetings with recruiters pretty much every single day. So we got to meet personally with people from Ubisoft, ArenaNet, Activision and Blizzard, Crystal Dynamics, and a lot of different companies, and what they would do is they would meet with us personally, and they would talk about like what they look for in employment, what the interview process might look like, how you can better yourself for the game industry after graduation, and just making sure that like once you graduate, like you've already got your foot in the door with some connections. So I thought that was really awesome, and I met like some really cool people in the industry. Another cool thing was all of the talks. So Champlain actually gave a lot of us scholarships to go to GDC this year. So there was a bunch of us there together, and I got to go to a lot of different talks. One of my favorite ones was by some people at Snapchat, and there was also some guest speakers that like worked at Cuphead, if you know that game, and they taught us a tutorial on how to make a Snapchat filter. So like little dancing hot dog guy, they taught us how to make our own, and I already made my own. It was really cool. So that was definitely my favorite talk, but there was a lot of different things. So there was the whole expo floor too, where you could go around, see different booths. A lot of different companies were there, and you could go up to them, play like what their newest game or what they've been working on, do a little demo. Usually they'd give you like a free t-shirt or something, and then you could kind of make connections that way too. So overall, really great experience.
It's amazing. I was actually going to ask you a follow-up question, but you answered it, so never mind. But James was also able to attend GDC last year through our Emergent Media Center, which is really cool, and I'm sure he had a similar experience. But I wanted to move on to some other incredible opportunities that game students get to take advantage of while at Champlain. In particular, I want to talk about our study abroad program up in Montreal. James and Laura were abroad this time last year, so I want to ask you both, what was studying abroad in Montreal like?
Cold. Montreal was amazing. It was cold. That's not a lie. We went in January. You can go in the fall or in they call it the spring. Really, it's the winter. But it is beautiful up there. The culture in Montreal is amazing. The food is amazing. Basically, there isn't a day that goes by where I don't miss being up in Montreal. In terms of classes, pretty much all of the game classes up there are taught by people who work in the industry during the day. Laura's Production 2 professor works at Ubisoft.
Yep. She's a gameplay programmer there.
Yeah, my Production 2 professor sort of works just in the technology sector. Where did Jeff work?
Autodesk. Maya.
Yeah, so our Graphics 2 professor works at Autodesk, who are the makers of Maya, which is the software that all the 3D artists or the 3D modelers use. So yeah, it was an awesome experience. The classes there were intense. They were really hard, but we learned so much because these are people who are working on the cutting edge stuff, during the day, and then they would come teach us classes at night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really great. And then aside from like the kind of the classes that you can take there, there's so much to do just in Montreal. James and I went to a cat cafe where you can go and get coffee and pastries, and there was just like 15 cats hanging out, walking around. There was also like events that the resident assistants at the campus would hold. So like we went ice skating together. We did a scavenger hunt around the city. There was Old Montreal, which is kind of a little bit more touristy, but there's like a beautiful pier and dock there, and just basically anywhere you go, there's good food and cool things to do.
Awesome. I think I've also been to that cat cafe. It is pretty great. So I do have a follow-up, but actually not for James and Laura. This question is for Zach and Michael Paul. Since you're both sophomores, next year, or actually just starting next semester, you'll have the opportunity to study abroad in Montreal. Do either of you plan on going?
Yes, both of us actually. Yeah. So I decided to go because it's going up to Montreal. One, studying abroad is a really cool experience. In high school, I was able to take trips abroad, and I just want to kind of go back and do that again. And this gives me the opportunity to not just go there for a bit, but stay there and have classes there. And also because I just want to be in a new environment. I want to learn different things from people who are on the cutting edge of this industry. And especially since, Montreal for us is like 2 hours up. It's going to be really easy to come back, see our friends who are staying here for the fall semester and stuff like that. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, it's like honestly the same. Montreal is definitely a 2-hour away, but it's completely different. It's nice. It's super helpful especially for the gaming industry.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic networking, and also for me, I personally love to travel around. And just Montreal is definitely one of the places I want to be for a semester.
So exciting. I'm really glad that both of you have decided to go. I visited Montreal a couple times, and it certainly is an incredible city. And I know James loved it so much that he stayed there the whole summer. James also had an internship while he was there, and I was actually kind of hoping James, wouldn't mind talking a little bit about his internship experience.
Yeah, so I actually had two internships while I was in Montreal. I had a part-time internship at a company called Moment Factory, and that was during the semester where we were studying abroad. And then I had a second internship over the summer at Behavior Interactive. So one thing I do want to say is that when I was there over the summer, it wasn't through Champlain. I had a lot of help from the Champlain people. All of the Champlain Montreal staff were amazing at helping me find resources, helping me find a place to live. But I just want to note that it wasn't through the school. So with that out of the way, it was an amazing experience. I think I learned more during my first, couple weeks at my internship than in all of junior year. And that's not to say anything bad about my classes. It's just when you are at an actual game company working on an actual project, the pace that they work at, the amount that they expect from you is amazing, right? And the amount of help that they give you too. It wasn't like I was just thrown in the water and said, all right, here's the list of tasks, have it done by the end of the week. My supervisor helped me every step of the way. I was actually learning a new programming language. I was learning a new code architecture. And I can actually finally say this now. I was working on the new Westworld mobile game, which is really awesome. And I had to wait months to be able to tell anyone what the project was. But yeah, I came away from that internship feeling 20, 30, 40 times more prepared for a job than I could have ever been without it. I recommend that everyone apply for as many internships as you can, wherever you can, basically, because it is an experience it uses all the stuff that you've learned in the classroom, but it pushes it so much further.
Perfect. Well, it sounds like you got to work on some really cool projects there. So thank you for sharing, James. But I wanted to bring the conversation back to the whole group for a second. We've all had plenty of time to get to know the faculty that work within the game studio here. I was wondering if each of you could talk about your experience with game faculty. How have they supported you during your time here?
It was a little bit daunting for me to come to Champlain in my major as a female programmer. I had never ever programmed before in my life before I came to Champlain. And literally, I think my first week here, I had lunch with a professor, and I kind of just talked in what I was thinking through my head, if this was the right path for me. And the first thing he said was, "Come to my office hours today at this time." I showed up, and he gave me 3 books to read. He talked to me about just words of encouragement, things I can do to keep myself up there, and he checked in with me constantly, and that was in my first semester here. And through then, he's always been a pretty close professor to me, as well as all of the faculty here. If you have a problem with something, if you aren't understanding something, they are always saying come to my office hours. I have one professor, sometimes he's here until about 11 p.m. at night, sometimes later, and it's open hours. He's always just come and hang out, even if you don't have a question specific to what the class is and you just want to talk. Maybe you want to talk about interview questions for after graduation, for applying. They always want to help you out. And I think it's really important that they do that, but they also are just so into seeing us succeed. And I'm sure you.
Yeah, I mean, literally just yesterday, there was a problem for my game physics class that I could not figure out for the life of me. And it wasn't my professor's office hours or anything like that. I just was hoping that I would be able to catch him. So I walked over to the building where his office is, and he was walking out heading to lunch. And basically we walked together while he was going to get lunch, and he explained all of it to me. And, after that, I went to the lab, started working on it. And then my phone, buzzed, and it was an email from him with a better way to solve the problem that we had just worked out on that walk together. That, basically he went to lunch and kept thinking about this problem that I had come to him with, and sent me what he thought the best answer would be. So it's little things like that in addition to the big stuff.
Also, while I was at GDC, some of our professors went and they must have tapped me on the shoulder 5 or 6 times in one day saying, hey, go talk to this person now. Hey, go talk to this recruiter. Or, hey, I told them you were going to go say hi to them. Go say hi to them. And so they kind of helped us with that kind of stuff too, but they're really awesome.
Yeah, the professors here, they're very nice. One of my favorite professors, he constantly supports me with like these small phrases from like movies or books, which is like kind of funny. Really, can't talk. Wow, you really get to know your professors, and one of my favorite professors, and also like he's kind of like my best friend on campus. He he just sometimes shows up and saying, "Hey, you're doing good," and I'm like, "Thanks," just out of the blue. Kind of quirky, kind of funny. Yeah, he helps me whenever I'm down. I sometimes just text him like, "Hey, I don't understand this," and then he's like, "Go ask your actual professor." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, I kind of second that. Like, all the professors here are phenomenal. They have worked in the industry and they know what they're talking about. And even just as professors, they are some of the most open and welcoming people I know. Kind of like James said, they have office hours which you can go to and ask. But I've seen them, walking to lunch or even just walking to their car at the end of the day, and I've struck up a conversation with them, and they're always ready to talk, and they're always happy to help, and they're just all around amazing people. And I feel like I can go to them with, questions about coursework or just questions about my life in general. You just talk in the office. Yeah, just like come talk with me, and we'll talk for 2 hours about a certain class we're having, and not even discuss the thing I wanted to discuss. And that's okay because we were just having such a good time talking.
Yeah, I think all of the game faculty here are just so incredibly supportive. So thank you all for talking about that. But I kind of wanted to just follow up with that here and also mention some of the other great resources that we have here on campus, just right within the Champlain student community. So I was wondering, how have your peers or upper class students helped you succeed during your time here?
So the biggest thing, I personally always recommend working in the labs on campus. Some people work better at home. Personally, I need to be in the labs to work. I can't get anything done at home on my computer. And so one of the biggest benefits to that is that the upper class students are always around. So starting your first semester when you're just new to college, new to this whole game development thing, and you're working on your game history and development projects in the lab, sometimes a junior or a senior will walk by and see what you're doing and say, oh, hey, you should do this a slightly different way, and it'll be easier for you to do. And usually you'll have a better product in the end listening to them. So it's just a matter of, there's always people around, and there's always people who are like, looking around at the other computers and seeing what the underclass students are doing.
Yeah, I couldn't stress enough to like hang out in those labs because you'll meet so many friends that way, and they'll be able to help you with things, and you might even be able to help them with things too. Another thing is the alumni here are also really great about keeping in touch with the students after they graduate. It was just a few weeks ago where I had like a horrible bug in one of my games, and so I messaged one of my friends who is graduated and has a job now, and I'm sure he was super busy with whatever he was doing, but he took the time to help me out with a bug while he was on a bus somewhere. And he was able to help as much as he could, and he was really nice about it. So they really do keep in touch with Champlain after they graduate, and so they're always like a good resource for that too.
As a producer aspect, like it's super nice to have other people's like little opinions and like point of view. I would just talk to seniors or juniors who are designers, programmers, artists, and even producers, and talk about like what would they do, or if something comes up, how should I manage that? Or just like in channel questions, channel concerns, and they're super honest, super personal about like what they have done and what they regretted and how should we avoid it in my group and group that comes after me. So
Right.
yeah.
This is a really big question for me because the first thing that, well, not really the first thing, but I'd say the most important thing I've ever done is my first year here. I went and I met a bunch of juniors, a bunch of seniors, a bunch of sophomores. So since then, now that I'm a sophomore, I know so many seniors. James in particular has helped me out so much, and he teaches me things that I don't even ask. I just kind of look at his capstone game and the amazing stuff that he's doing in it, and it's a really great experience to have him be able to explain that to me. And in part of me being friends with all of these seniors, I am particularly close with one senior, and I was offered a spot on his capstone team to help him make levels. So it's these friendships that turn into work relationships, kind of, but that open up new possibilities. Because now at the end of this semester, instead of only having sophomore level games on my portfolio, I'll be able to put down this senior capstone level game and say, I did that. I worked on this big part of it. And to me, that's an amazing thing.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I think between faculty and the support of students right here on campus, I think that there's so much help available for anybody in the game studio. It really is such a satisfying feeling having those resources available to you. And I know that one of the first things that you learn here at Champlain is how you manage your time. You know, how much time you spend playing games versus making them or doing your other homework. So I wanted to ask everyone, since your first semester here to where you are now, how have you handled time management?
So my first semester at Champlain, I had Professor Jonathan Ferguson for game history and development. And he, I think more than any other professor, stresses the importance of time management to his students. One of our first assignments in that class was basically to plan almost every minute of our day on Google Calendar. So we actually had to take a screenshot of our calendar and submit it for a grade. And you would lose points if it wasn't specific enough. So in addition to like scheduling all your classes in there and, you know, scheduling basic, all right, this is when I'm going to eat lunch and breakfast and dinner. You had to schedule in, all right, this is when I'm going to do the homework for this class. This is when I'm going to do the homework for my other class. This is when I'm going to play games, and so on and so forth. And I will say at this point, my senior year, I don't have my Google Calendar set up to quite that granular level of detail, but I still use it excessively, right? All of my classes are still on there. Any other appointment is still on there. Having Google Calendar is what got me through college, essentially.
Yeah, I think the jump between like a high school schedule to where you have all of your classes in one day every day to where in college you might have one class the entire day and you have all this free time. It is pretty hard to get used to that change, and you might your first semester not really plan that right, and you might say like, oh, I have all this free time, I'm gonna like hang out with my friends. And that was a pretty hard step for me to kind of get used to my first year. So I did have a lot of late nights, some all-nighters, but now as a senior right now, with all the work that I do have, I haven't pulled an all-nighter in over a year. And I think that's because we've just learned to do our work pretty much as soon as it's assigned. If you're doing stuff the night before it's due, maybe you should start that kind of Google Calendar thing where you're planning everything out. But I think just at Champlain, if you start things like the day or so that they're assigned, you'll be perfect and you won't have to worry about losing sleep or being super crazy stressed.
Yeah, I will say that as a senior graduating in a couple months, and you know, I do think it is partially thanks to Professor Ferguson. All 4 years, I have never once done an all-nighter in college.
Yeah, so far, I can say I've never done an all-nighter. Knock on wood. Yeah, it's just honestly just be on top of your just knowing what's due and how long the estimation will of the homework will be. Actually, our current professor, Professor Ware, I had him in my first semester for game history and development, and he came up to us and saying the only person you can blame for late work is yourself, which I like kept that to heart. I thought that was super important as a first year, and since then I've been just making sure that everything is due, everything is organized. You can ask that my calendar, my agenda is just all color coded, and it was like time estimation. So.
Yeah, and like James, I had Professor Ferguson my first semester here, and I also had to do that project where we mapped out our lives on a Google Calendar. And while my schedule isn't down to the exact minute like it was back then for that assignment, I certainly use Google Calendar and my planner and a whole bunch of organizational devices to keep me on track of things. I have never been the kind of person to delay an assignment the night before was due or to turn in their late work or anything like that. And even then, I still felt like I needed to have some kind of planner or assignment. It's been incredibly useful to help me organize my work because definitely your first semester here, and specifically for game designers, I can't speak to any other majors, but you get a lot of work your first semester. And a lot of it is to see how well you deal with juggling all of these different things at once. And it's been nice to use all these different tools to organize my life, and having our professor actually force us to make an assignment for that, I think really helped me understand the importance of organization really early on.
Yeah, I think I have to sort of mention just how important that sort of scheduling assignment is in your game history development class. I too now live off of my Google Calendar like James does. But I just want to remind the audience that we have, just about under 15 minutes left of our live stream. So if you have any questions for any of our panelists, please feel free to send them in. We do have one that we're going to answer right now. And this one I'm going to direct towards Michael Paul. How do you feel about the core classes alongside your majors?
I actually enjoy it because you can because core classes like it's very wide, and you can pick any topics later on. Later on in the beginning you take rhetoric and concept of self, so it's just nice to understand who are you as a person. Which for myself, I love reflection and I love retrospecting about yourself and the community around you. And later on in your sophomore year and also junior year, you go more specific. You'll talk about, I'm taking a class called Hero and Heroines, Kid Hero, where we talk about superheroes, especially superheroes who are children, and what's the difference. And then later on, the main question is, how are they a hero and what is a modern hero, which I find super. I just love that kind of topic and conversation. Core classes really think like make you think in a unique and creative way, which I think for the gaming industry is very needed. To think in a very creative way, try to be very innovative about the problem solving, about how to communicate or how to express a certain topic in the community that you're trying to portray in the game.
And to go off that just a little bit more, I think the core curriculum is especially important for game majors, kind of like Michael Paul said, because as game majors, we take a lot of influence from, or a lot of inspiration, I should say, from a lot of different sources. So if you learn about psychology in core, or if you learn about the people who live in Zanzibar, two very different extremes, as a game major, we can use any of that for our projects. We can take inspiration from anywhere. So core has been, I think, definitely better for game majors because we have all of these amazing experiences to draw from.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. That's actually a really good answer, and I'm glad that that viewer asked that question because I think people tend to forget how important the core curriculum is in sort of creating or making you into that sort of rounded individual, and I think that's something that's important as a game developer. So I have another question here for all of you. What has been the most challenging hurdle you've had to overcome so far as a game student?
I'd say the most challenging hurdle was that initial learning to manage your time. I think that is like the biggest challenge that comes up when you transition from high school into college life, because it's just so different going from being in school 6 or 7 hours a day to being in class maybe 3 hours a day, and the rest of the time is just spent on homework because you don't want to do homework, right? It's like in high school, you want to play games when you're not in school. But yeah, once sort of Professor Ferguson, drilled that into my head, and all of my other professors as well, it's been easier.
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle for me maybe might be like imposter syndrome or something like that. And I know that's pretty prominent in games, in the game industry, but it's not limited to the game industry. I know a lot of people, and no matter what their major, can experience it. But that's probably the hardest thing that I've had to overcome. But having like friends here in my major who are like super supportive, and the faculty are super supportive, they've really helped me through it. And
explain what imposter
yeah,
syndrome
if for anyone who doesn't know what imposter syndrome is, that's basically when you don't feel like you're good enough, or that you feel like you've cheated your way to where you are now. So like, even though you've been doing all this hard work, you might feel like you didn't deserve it, or that like it wasn't actually you who did it. So a lot of people do feel like that. And I was actually talking on Twitter to a girl who works at Certain Affinity, and she has been there for 10 years, and she said that even she feels that sometimes. So I think it's important to remember that like it happens to everyone, and you shouldn't be so hard on yourself. But it is a hurdle that I think a lot of students, no matter where you are, feel.
So, honestly, it's just learning how to take time for yourself. Actually, like go treat yourself, but like I would say carve a time, like at least once a day, maybe an hour a day, just to relax, just to have no work, lay down, read a book, watch TV. I personally don't want to play video games after a whole day of talking about video games. So I just love to just read a book and just relax.
Yeah, and I agree. It's been a lot of the same for me from everyone. I think the biggest thing out of all those three things is imposter syndrome for me. I came into this school and already I knew I had done a lot of hobby work before this, before coming to Champlain as a game developer and designer. And coming in and seeing the amount of skill that other people had that maybe had worked longer than me, maybe worked shorter than me, just made me feel like I wasn't good enough to be there. But like Laura said, a lot of these professors, a lot of these other students are really, really helpful, who they know everything that you're going through. And the most important thing to realize when you have imposter syndrome is that other people are feeling the same way you feel. So it's been really nice to have that kind of community, and you have to find it at first, but once you have it, our community has stayed together for a very long time.
True.
Yeah, and thank you, Laura and Zach, for kind of explaining what imposter syndrome is, because I think that's something, like Zach said, that everyone tends to feel, especially in the game industry. We have a couple questions from our viewers that I want to throw out there. So this one asks if any of you are doing minors as well as or doing minors as well, alongside your major. How are you handling the work between your major and a minor? Now, Zach, I know you have a minor, so why don't you answer that one?
Right. So, like I said before, I'm a game design major with a minor in game programming. My minor, specifically going into a minor in game programming while being a designer, is very well built into the curriculum. As a designer, you already have the option of taking a lot of programming courses, and you actually get probably about a fourth of the minor done in the regular course if you just decide to take the programming courses themselves. So moving into the minor has been very graceful. I haven't missed any electives. I haven't had to take any extra classes. It's all slotted itself in very well. As far as the workload goes, sorry about that. As far as the workload goes, it's been the same amount of work as a lot of my other peers. Of course, we are taking, or I am taking more programming courses, but other people who aren't taking these programming courses are taking courses in maybe art or other disciplines. So we are all specializing in different things with our minors, even if you don't actually get a minor in it. But to wrap it all up in a neat package, minors work very well with majors. There's a lot of room for leeway between them. So I've never felt overwhelmed because of my minor.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. And for that viewer, I just want to say that you can find the list of all of our majors and minors on our website. We have another viewer question. This one I'm going to direct towards Laura. How do you deal with how cold it gets up in Vermont?
So it does get really cold up here. It's kind of windy because of the lake, but I would say like you got to buy a good coat. You need really good boots, especially ones that will go through snow, and a good pair of gloves and a hat. But just like anywhere else that's cold, you need the right kind of clothes for it. But the great thing about Champlain is since it's a pretty small campus, all of our buildings are so close together, and oftentimes you can get to one building by going through another one. So you really don't have to walk in the cold that much. But really, you just kind of got to embrace it. There's a lot of cool things you can do outside, like you can go ice skating on the lake when it freezes over, or you can even walk on the lake. There's a lot of really great hot chocolate places nearby. Our campus store actually sells Champlain hot chocolate. It's really good. So if you don't like the cold, I know I really hate the cold. You honestly, it's really not that bad, and as long as you got the right clothes, it should be good.
Yeah, the other thing that I like to say on tour is that it doesn't snow as much here in Burlington as in other parts of Vermont. So like there's the ski resorts and stuff that have multiple feet of snow, and here in Burlington we'll have like 4 or 5 inches. So
it
you
really
still
doesn't stick.
Yeah, you still want boots, but it's not like you're going to be trudging through the snow to get to class.
Yeah, I'd say I definitely agree with that. A hat is important, or grow a beard. It definitely helps. Okay, so I'm actually going to just ask all of you our final question of the night, and this is going to be a question kind of directed towards looking towards the future. So, where do you see yourself, or where do you hope to see yourself 5 years from now, career-wise? Do you think Champlain's game studio has set you on the right path to help lead you toward that goal?
So I actually am very lucky to have just accepted an offer like last week or the week before for a full-time game programming position at Vicarious Visions in Albany, New York. So I'm actually going to be moving to where Laura is from. So I'm really excited about this position. I definitely feel prepared for it. My internship had a massive part in that, getting to see what working in the game industry is like. And then my game programming classes and the game, production classes here at Champlain, just add more and more knowledge on top of it. So I definitely feel ready. I feel terrified just because we're going out into the real world, right? This is finally it. But yeah.
I am currently in the process of applying for jobs, and I can say that in the interviews I've had so far, just answering some of the questions that they've asked, I've had some of the hiring managers say things like, wow, you'd be surprised at the amount of people don't know what X is or what X is. I'm surprised that you know what that is. And it's because Champlain taught it to us. And I think like meeting some really great people at GDC through Champlain has given me some really great connections. So I know Ubisoft really likes Champlain students, and they want to connect with us more. And I met another girl game programmer named Laura at GDC actually, who had just emailed me today about a possible position. And it's like through all these people that I've met with the help of Champlain that I feel really confident that I'll be working somewhere by the summer, maybe, or even after that. Yeah.
Especially as a sophomore, myself, I have another 2 years to think about, but I do want to work for a company, medium to large size company, especially that company like more family friendly, very bubbly. Like that's kind of my style. Hopefully as a producer, hopefully a producer, executive producer, but definitely want to work for a company that supports a lot of family friendly games.
Right, and for me, I'm in the same boat for us sophomores. It's 3 years down the line until we even have to start thinking about that. Thankfully,
Yeah.
But I have no worries that I'm going to not get a job when I come out of here. I definitely see myself working I do want to work at a big name company. Ideally, my my dream company would be Blizzard, and I know as a fresh out of college, I'm not going to get that, so I'll work my way up, and that's just an industry thing. That's not a that's not a college thing. But yeah, I think 5 years down the line for me, it's a little hard to say, but I'm not worried that I won't be working in the game industry. I feel like Champlain has definitely prepared me.
Great. Awesome. I know I said that would be the last question, but we do actually have just 2 more viewer questions that I wanted to throw out there just for our last couple minutes. So this question I'm going to direct towards Michael Paul again. And this question is related to being cold in Vermont. Does anyone ever actually want to be outside besides just playing in the snow?
Well, coming from Aruba, an island that's very warm, always in the 90s, in the Caribbean. I personally like to be out of snow. I have some friends that like to be out of snow too. It's depending on the mood and again free time. I remember the first time when it snowed this school year. There's a bunch of people that was outside trying to play snowball
And sledding.
and sledding, which is fun. Always depends on the crowd and always depends on how you want to interpret the snow at the current time.
Right.
So.
And especially you get beautiful snowfalls up here where it's like middle of the night and you're coming back from the labs and you're like, oh, I just kind of want to walk a little bit further, and it's just dead silent in Burlington and the snow's falling very slowly. It's not that quiet. Those are some of my favorite nights here.
All right. Yeah, I honestly, the snow is really pretty. Let's all be honest. Like, it's cold, but it's a beautiful sight to see. And this is going to be our real last final question of the night. So one of our viewers asks, are there any misconceptions about being a game major in college, and about being part of the game industry in general? And would you be able to clear any of these misconceptions up? And James, I want you to answer this question if you can.
Sure. So I think one of the biggest ideas that people have about being in the game industry or being a game major in college is that, well, there's 2. The first is that we all just play video games. And the second is that we're all just nerds, right? So I can say that being a game major in college means that you will not have much time to play video games. I play maybe a 5%, maybe 10% of what I used to before college. And one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to for after graduation is being able to play video games again. But so that's not what it is, right? There's a lot of hard work involved. There's a lot of communication involved. There's a lot of, learning to deal with interpersonal conflicts, learning to flesh out ideas together, resolve, differences in opinion. For programmers, there's really hard technical skills that you have to master. And same thing for artists and designers, and producers as well. It's really difficult stuff. It's not just sitting around and playing games. And then the second thing about all of us just being, game nerds, we are all game nerds, but we're not just game nerds, right? Everyone I know who is in, the game majors has other interests and other things that excite them. You know, I have friends who play sports, believe it or not. I have friends who are really into music. I have friends who are really into, you know, all sorts of different hobbies. There are even people in the game majors who go to the gym. I'm not one of them, but they do exist. So yeah, I think that's really the biggest thing, is that it's not just about games. We're all excited about the fact that our job is to make games. We all love doing this, but there's so much more, right, that happens in the game studio.
Yeah, and in the game industry too, like I know a lot of, I don't know if it's a misconception, but that everyone's very, very scary and unapproachable that works in the game industry, because I know a lot of them don't have a lot of time and a lot of them are pretty busy. But honestly, I think going on Twitter for me specifically has taught me that like people in the game industry, they're just like us, just students, and they're still learning too. And they're all open to being direct message. They encourage it. They always are posting, hey, send me a message. And I've had some really great conversations with people, and they aren't scary at all.
Yeah. That's one of the things about being in an industry that changes so frequently and is always innovating, is that everyone is learning. Even the people who have been in the game industry for 20, 30 years, they're still learning too. And it kind of puts all of us on I'd say like a level playing field in a way, which is really awesome. And it's something that's kind of unique about games.
Thank you so much for answering that question, James and Laura. I couldn't have said it better myself. So that is all the time that we have for today, and I want to thank all of our panelists, James, Laura, Michael, Paul, and Zach. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your stories. If any of you who were watching tonight joined us late or missed any of the questions that you were hoping to get answered, you can find all of our live streams on our admissions blog website, champlainadmissions.champlain.edu. Our next live stream will be on April 1st at 7 p.m. with intern Michelle, and she's going to be offering advice to admitted students about what their next step should be. Thank you again, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful night. Before we sign off here, I just want to kick it back over to Javon so he can close us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, viewers. I want to echo what Charlie said. Our next live stream is going to be this upcoming Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And the title is I'm Admitted, Now What? Learn more about the Admitted Student Day, orientation, and what your next steps will be. So the live stream will be the perfect opportunity for you to view the road ahead and really ask any questions that you might have and have them answered by students who are living the Champlain experience. And have had that transition. So as a reminder, Charlie said it perfectly, these past live streams will be located on our admitted student site on the Champlain College website. You can also find them on our admissions blog and on YouTube as well. The admitted student days are upcoming, and those are going to be April 7th and April 14th. But if you want to get in on the conversations and meet your future classmates early, then I 100% encourage you to join the Champlain College Class of 2022 Facebook group. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great evening.